Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Rembrandt, Vincent van Gogh, Pablo Picasso, Chris Burden. I remember walking off the street with my first little film, I walk in and, like to buy some TV time, please. Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci. Michelangelo. It was small and it would come out big, and I would say them. Rembrandt. 8, 10 million people were being forced to see this. No choice. Vincent van Gogh. I was going to use Warhol too, but he was still alive then. I didn't want to give him a free commercial. Pablo Picasso. And then the last name was Chris Burden. But it made people very, very angry.
What's the biggest misconception about your work?
As a piece of sculpture,
Right.
you allowed someone to shoot you.
Right.
With a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in your mind, that was the sculpture, the result of you being shot.
No, just the moment when I was getting shot was the sculpture. Just that instant when the bullet traveled from the gun into my arm.
Uh-huh. Was it worth it?
Yeah, it was a good piece.
Yeah, but who could appreciate it?
You do.
Well, I can appreciate the
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here because of that piece.
Got no cover.
Careful here, it's really steep. When I first bought the first lot, which is down there, the 10 acres, you couldn't drive here, you had to walk. So you had to park your car about halfway down the road, and then you had to walk back here. And so there was nobody here, absolutely nobody. Hey, Balls, where have you been? You look happy. Wiley, what have you guys been up to? There's tons of land this way. It goes down across Topanga Creek. I mean, you could actually walk to the valley going that way, but it's across a cliff face, and so it's kind of hairy. But I take hikes down through here. It takes a couple hours to go around. But I think it's interesting that the idea of a scientist and an artist and an engineer, hundreds of years ago, there was no distinction. My plan wasn't to be an artist, but rather to be an architect. And then one summer I worked in an architect's office. What I saw there was very, very discouraging. Students who'd gotten out of Harvard University. These are people who have gone to the university for 8 years. And they'd be sitting at a desk and they'd be drawing bathrooms, And the guys that made the decisions were 55 years old. And I thought, wait a minute, I don't want to wait that long. I decided I didn't want to be an architect, but a sculptor. And I was heavily discouraged from it. I remember the chairman of my department saying, it's bad enough to be an artist, but to be a sculptor is suicide. You know, that only fueled my desire.
I met Chris, I think, the first day of graduate school at UC Irvine. In the art department, it was the first graduate program. It was being made up as it went along. They gave us a graduate gallery, but it was horrible. The room with a huge clock, windows we couldn't control, and a bunch of lockers. You know, I mean, what are you going to do with this ugly space that looks like it belongs in a high school gym?
And I went in there, and I saw these lockers, and I figured out that I could do something.
I was teaching at UC Irvine, and I'd heard about this guy that was going to get inside of a locker that was 2 by 2 by 2. He tied himself up in a knot to get in that thing. And he was in there for, what was it, 2 weeks or, Marilyn?
5 days.
5 days he was in that locker. And so that was the talk of the campus.
Not much, not much.
Water and food in there?
I have water, I don't have any food.
Which way are you sitting?
Right now?
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm sort of,
You ready?
no, I'm kneeling. Yeah. I'm an artist, and this is a, you know, piece of art.
Well, no one will know that you've done it.
Oh, yes, they will. You'll know, you'll know.
What can I say? I mean, there wasn't much to see except you could talk to him and you could come in and out of the room. It was pretty minimal. I guess you could bang on the locker and he would make a noise.
What's happening?
Do you feel like a hamster or something?
Sure do. I feel like an animal.
Bye, Chris.
Are you leaving? See you later.
That was his graduate thesis, if I'm not mistaken. And I told all the students that whatever they did, it now had to include as much effort as Chris had put into that thing. I thought he was phenomenal, a magician.
I heard about it, and I said, that's about as fucking dumb as you can possibly be. I didn't look at the locker, but that's stupid. I think he's a brilliant guy. I think he's really a sharp guy, but woo.
Chris was a bit of an issue in the very beginning. The faculty weren't sure whether he was dangerous, crazy. He would do things which would be like a slap in the face, you know. Then he'd come to me and say, they're all mad at me. They're all, you know, upset. And I was say, you gotta be kidding. You just rang their bell.
I studied minimalism. I made minimalist art as a student. I started making it bigger and bigger, and I noticed just working on them, just to go from one end to the other, you know, I was walking a lot. And I kept thinking about what sculpture was. What is the essence of sculpture that's different than painting? A two-dimensional work you stand in front of and you look at. Sculpture, you're supposed to walk around because it's three-dimensional, right? So you stand in front and then you walk to the side and you look at the back and you walk around. Sculpture forces the viewer to be active, physically active. And if you take a reduction, you take the minimalist thing, well, sculpture is action. graduate school, I did a series of works, sort of like exercise equipment, but the idea wasn't to exercise, it was to make the viewer active. The problem with those pieces was people would come in and they'd see these objects and they'd go, oh, it's so pretty, so nice. And they'd see the object as the sculpture, when in fact that wasn't the point at all. These objects were just devices to make you become the sculpture. I figured out that the act of doing something in itself could be art, and I didn't have to make an object. And that's how I got to do performances and call them art.
I did a piece where I disappeared without prior notice to anybody. I just left. There was, in fact, an audience. The audience being, where is Chris, right? Where's Chris Burden? We haven't seen him. What happened to him?
He says, didn't you notice I was gone? And, well, no, I had no reason to see him, so I didn't know he was gone, and that was a piece. So obviously I was involved in that piece because I didn't know he was gone.
His next piece, he sat high, suspended on a platform drinking bourbon, while one spectator at a time walked into the room. Then through 4 super loud political rally amplifiers, he kept shouting, "Get out, get out," until the spectator couldn't take the painful noise anymore and left.
I don't think my pieces always provide answers. I think they just ask questions. I think that's what art is about. It doesn't have a purpose, you see, and that's what it is. It's a sort of a free spot in society where you can do anything.
He was indirectly radicalizing a whole group of us. We would all go back to our studio and look at our paintings on canvas and say, well, this isn't going to get it anymore. We got to do something else.
Chris had the idea that we could cheaply create our own gallery. And that was how F-Space happened. There were graduate students, undergraduate students, people not in the school, each contributing $100 and agreeing to sit each other's shows. It was raw and you could do whatever you wanted. It was really just ours. We were constantly asking ourselves, what is art? What can art be?
We were dynamite. We were total innovators in the whole art world. We were.
Performance art, it's new, but that doesn't make it art. It only makes a thing that silly people go to see. It has absolutely nothing to do with painting, sculpture, drawing, printmaking, or any of the other ancestral forms of art. You need people who will say, no, this has nothing whatever to do with art. This is rubbish.
At 80 bid, 80. May I say 5? 80 bid, 80. On my right, 5.
There was a feeling in the early 70s of a reaction to this inflated art market. We would make an art that couldn't be bought or sold, and thereby gain control of it again.
So I was strapped to the floor, my legs, arms, neck, and on either side of me, about 6 feet away, were rubber buckets full of water, and directly above them were outlets, electrical outlets, and into each bucket was an extension cord that was plugged into the outlets and came down into the buckets. So that was the piece. I would get bolted in at a certain time, and I'd stay there, and people could come and see me in this sort of situation.
The eventual resolution of the piece was left up to them, whether or not they kicked over the water.
But the buckets become so powerful, or the situation becomes so powerful. It's just an energy situation. People come in, and immediately they're aware of the implications. So what happens is they don't even go near the buckets.
It's, I mean, I keep not wanting to say the word sadomasochism, but he would poise it right on the edge. There's a kind of a science fair aspect to it, combined with something really sinister.
I'm not about death, and I didn't want to die, but I wanted to come close, okay, in a sense. For a long time, I've been trying to figure out a way to use a gun and have it in an art context. And I figured out these elaborate schemes of rifles and how to do it. These ideas come in, and they're not quite right. And it takes a long time for them to finally click. All of a sudden, that just seemed right. And I see it in my mind to stand there and have somebody shoot me. It seemed a very powerful sculpture.
Everybody has fantasized about being shot, either consciously or subconsciously. And you read about it, you see it on TV, and you see it in the news. And so everybody, especially in America, thinks about it a lot. It's as American as apple pie, that it being shot or shooting people.
I had been in the Army. I had rifle experience. I had the marksman badge. He asked me if I'd be interested in shooting, doing the shooting. And I said, yeah, it sounds like something I'd like to do.
The plan was that the bullet was to scratch my arm. Just one little scratch, one drop of blood. It's like, have you been shot or haven't you?
We were using F-space to practice, and we do a vertical line. I practiced shooting that line to simulate what would eventually be his arm.
The bullet was supposed to go by just, like a scratch, Everybody there believed that that's what was going to occur. We didn't have a first aid kit, didn't have a bandage. And everybody there believed that it would be so precise and so controlled that that's what would happen. And in fact, that's not what happened.
Chris told us that, I think he even said, Bruce is going to shoot him. Really. There were just a very few people there. And the room was very, very charged. Everyone was just paying attention and trying not to cause any problem whatsoever. If anyone had coughed or said, don't do it, Chris, or anything like that, it could have been a disaster. We all kind of realized we had his life in our hands. And it was like this direct connection, of visceral connection between my body and his body.
I mean, my early work is, what is it, 70, 45 years. I don't go around thinking so much about my early work on a daily basis, but I certainly don't want to do performances now. I mean, I'm doing one right now, but, not quote with the art label on it or something, that doesn't seem very appealing to me. Well, it got to be sort of a funny situation. I mean, right before I was shot, I thought it was art, but then afterwards, it's such a physical thing that I had some questions. I mean, I'm lying in the hospital. Police are asking me questions. It gets strange, right?
What does your wife think about all of these things?
Well, she's been supporting me for 6 years, so she must be behind him to some extent.
She's been supporting you so that you can pursue this, huh?
Right.
Yeah. And she enjoys seeing you get shot?
He seemed exotic to me. And we got married in early 1967. I don't recall how much I told my family. Not everything, I'm sure. To be at one of Chris's early performances, for me, was filled with a fair amount of anxiety. What I did was try to push my own anxiety down and just function in a way to be helpful.
Chris and Barbara were perfect. I mean, she was really cute, and they were about the same size. What you might call a lovely couple.
My life was going to work and providing some money, although his family did help us.
Chris Burden here today, and we're talking about money.
Who's got it?
Who's got it is the first question. I don't know anybody who's got it, really.
Well, who wants it?
Everybody wants it.
Everybody wants it. Stay right there, don't look up.
You always want a little more, you know? However much you have, you always just want a little bit more.
You wouldn't buy any art, would you?
Oh, me? No, I never would. Why should I buy it? I can make it.
You can make anything I like. He would sit around and smoke a lot of dope and think all day.
Yeah.
That's what he would do. He would sit there for hours smoking a joint and thinking, and he would plan these things out forever.
The piece, Jesu, it has a meditative setup. You open the little box and there was marijuana in there. So I smoked about 2 hits of this thing. And then I felt that I was going off the ground. I was going out of my body. And I saw this very fine point going right down to his forehead, and away from it on these 2 beams came repeated images of him. And one side of the beam represented my sense of him as somebody you could trust absolutely. You know, he's very kind, very playful, very sensitive. Then the other one was this totally demonic, not demonic, but calculating, vindictive, very, very clever trickster, one you wouldn't trust for a minute, not a minute.
There was 2 sides to Chris. If I was doing something and he hadn't thought out what was going to happen, he would get very nervous. And I'm just talking like driving a car on a dirt road by a precipice or something. He would be a little nervous because he wasn't in control.
I remember as a child that I used to be involved in a lot of accidents. I could count on one every year. And towards the end of the year, I started getting real nervous because I was waiting for it to happen. I broke my leg, had a major thing. I spent a year in the hospital. My mother's boyfriend's Vespa turned over my foot. Maybe, I'm just thinking of this now. It seems that maybe now I don't know.
Well, we're trying to finish your sentence.
Well, that maybe now I've got control over it.
Uh-huh. At least you're using it.
Yeah. Did I have some kind of control?
Over what? Fate?
Well, sort of.
Some of the drive and the energy, I think, came out of a very stressful family situation. There was a fair amount of strife between mother and father. And his family lived in Europe for a while.
I mean, here's a guy, if you learned his background, which I found out very early in our relationship, brought up in Switzerland, the highest level of education and languages and cultures. And then when you met him, none of that appeared. In fact, you thought, here's this odd person who's kind of living on the edge of society.
We grew up on the outside of society. I think we were very well trained to be antisocial, misanthropic characters, both myself and my brothers. We were constantly traveling. We did feel different, terribly different.
Chris's brother and sister and him were kind of on their own to some extent. His dad was like a consultant at MIT, super smart. This is something that Chris told me. Chris came back to his house. His dad was sitting there watching some bullshit program on television. And Chris just looked at it and thought, this is nuts. And he picked something up and he threw it at the TV and it went right through the tube, right through the TV. Broke the thing. And then I think he just kind of went on and went up to his room. And I said, well, what did your dad do? He said, well, he kind of sat there for a second and kind of thought about it and then got up and went to his room.
Science has failed. Heat is life. Time kills. Science has failed. Heat is life. Time kills. Science.
He started pushing his own aesthetic into other people's lives.
Chris's wife, she was in a lot of the early pieces. She was the naked woman that was laying there while he was shooting the match rockets at her.
He tried to find volunteers, and he couldn't find anybody to do it, so I did it. And yes, they burned. And I flicked them off.
She supported it. And we don't always support things that are the best things for us. And she was going to put the nails through Chris's hands on the car.
You did a piece in which you were nailed to the back of a Volkswagen.
Mm-hmm. The piece yesterday, everybody was getting very, very upset. No, I couldn't find anybody who'd hammer the nails through my hands.
I remember Chris going around like this, kind of feeling his hands, trying to figure out where the nails could go through his hands without it hurting him. It's kind of the research before you do the piece.
Barbara, my wife, called me up from work. She was in tears. She wasn't coming home. She couldn't sleep last night.
I was not going to put him in danger. But there really wasn't any stopping him.
All the people around me seem to be, get very, very, there seems to be an energy level that gets built up before something's going to happen. That's actually where, to me, a lot of the interest in doing these things comes from.
All I know is I was supposed to be across from this garage in Venice, and at a certain time, the doors opened.
The car was run full throttle for approximately 2 minutes. So, in essence, the car was screaming for me.
You were hoping that it would explode?
Yeah, well...
Well, what would that have done?
Would have ended the piece sooner.
I think that the violence was part of it. He had a high threshold of pain when he needed one, but they look much more dangerous than they really are because he was very calculating. A lot of it was the image, and he figured that out. Nobody else figured that out.
The pieces work on different levels. The very instant it's made, it starts becoming a myth. There was something very satisfying to me that all I needed to make art was somebody to take pictures for me. Basically, all my artwork could be stored in a file cabinet. It was also a way to be able to keep making art without having to have what I have here now, which is sort of a giant machine.
I mean, I think I have a pretty lean shop. I have 4, 5, 6 employees or something, but not hundreds. And I only have this one place. I don't have multiple studios around LA or one in Hong Kong and one in Calcutta or something. You know, and I know a lot of artists do. I don't know how they do it personally, you know, stay centered and stuff, but you know, I buy stuff like the wolves. I have no idea what I'm going to do with those, you know. The turtles. The turtles I know what I'm going to do with. They all have a little spout. I want to make a fountain. And all these, you know, could squirt water. I have a fantasy of building a railroad. That's why I bought all these ties. And this was a prop in a Disney film called The Newsies. And it was drawn by a donkey, and it caught on fire. And, but it's full size, you know what I'm saying? I have 3 of those airplanes. I'd like to get 5 of them. That would be a good number. then I'd have something.
I remember Chris's studio. It was on the boardwalk in Venice, and his space was pretty small. Chris was really into his cappuccino machine, so every time you came over, he would make cappuccino. But it wasn't like an artist studio. I mean, there was nothing in there, except a little work table where he'd work on his little planes and these little units he made with rubber bands and push pins that he would shoot at you across the studio. There was so much experimentation with art that at the time, none of the establishment was interested at all.
I started paying attention to Chris, and it just got more and more interesting to me. And I convinced an editor who was connected to Esquire then that I wanted to do a big piece about this. He invited me to be the documentarian for 747. I may not have known everything until I got on the beach. And he said, "You have your cameras?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I have the pistol." Chris said, "I want to do a piece where I shoot at an airplane taking off from LAX. You take a picture of it, and that will be the piece." I think I said before he shot, I said, "You're not going to hit this, are you?" And he just, you know, gave me a look. Whether or not he ever crossed a line, you know, I heard debated. I thought that was kind of simple-minded. You know, what line? He's moving the line. That's the point. What if art was violent? You know, what if art hurt? What if it was painful? What if it scared the shit out of you? Is that art? Well, you know. He liked that idea, I think.
The performance was lying in the street in the traffic lane and having a tarpaulin put over me. Somebody called the police and reported an accident, and they came down. At first, the police were really angry because their adrenaline was worked up to see a mangled body, and lo and behold, here's this guy, you know, lying in the street for art. What a jerk.
Sheriff said, "You should come with me." Got in the cruiser, jail. I ended the piece by saying that that night he was going to the Coliseum to see Evel Knievel. I think that what Chris was doing was counter to that. His position was, there's no ideas in any of this.
I went to pick up some photographs at a photo lab, and the clerk said, "You're famous." And he pulled out a copy of Esquire magazine. You know, there were like 10 important men of 1973. And here I was with a belt around my arm, looking shocked and dazed. And then from that moment on, there was a deluge of press about it.
was living in ex-Yugoslavia, and the news would come very random. So we built this kind of mystic story about Chris Burden. He was the guy.
There were the people who took his work real seriously and thought that he created a new form. And then there were people that thought he was just like some kind of lunatic who was trying to get attention. I think it was pretty much evenly divided.
If it crossed the line into something like possible crime, I found that all the better. The idea of an art doer being a kind of aggressor seemed to me like this might be some kind of necessary step.
Journalists are pretty low life at the best of times. So if you do what Chris Burden did and have yourself shot by a friend and claim that that is art, that's going to be reported. And then suddenly you are, if not famous, certainly notorious, and notoriety is a great help.
Are you satisfied with the fame you've acquired? You don't seem too pleased with that. You think you should have more of a reputation in this field than you have?
Well, no, I have a misunderstood reputation, which is, I don't know, that's all right.
Why, what do you think people think of?
Well, it's like the Evel Knievel of art. Evel Knievel and I are two completely different people. I'm about art, and I'm about trying to do a quality thing in art. And Evel Knievel does the same thing over. He's a stuntman kind of, or, you know, he's a trickster. And I'm not a trickster. Like, everything I do is for real.
I was doing a cable TV show, and I had decided that I would ask Chris to do a piece on the show. He was very reticent, and he called me and he said, "Are you sure you want me to do a piece on the show?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." Almost right before, maybe a day before, he called me again and said, "Phil, are you sure? You're positive?" And I said, "Yes, definitely," but I was nervous. Chris came with a whole entourage of people, and in his belt he had a little knife. And I remembered my voice went up about 14 degrees. "Oh, are we going to have a little bloodletting today?" You know, and so he didn't say a word. And it started off kind of like an interview. And then suddenly he just got up, walked over to me, and he put that knife at my neck. And you can see from the photographs that have been taken of that piece that I was really terrified. And what went through my mind was, has he lost it? He said that he wanted them to turn onto live, and that if they didn't, that he was going to do something. I don't think it was more than 20 seconds, maybe. 25 seconds, until they turned it on, I believe, until they turned it on live. But that seemed like a very long time. And then afterwards, he just destroyed everything. There's no question that I was really scared. But I knew then, and I know now. He was going to shift art history.
The first time I heard of him, I was in art class, and on the last page of the art history book was Marcel Duchamp and Chris Burden, and my little brain. When I first met him, he introduced himself to me. You know, I was going up to meet him and sign up for his class, and he was like, "Hi, I'm Chris Burden." I was like, "Yeah, I know, you are."
What we're doing here is using these early cast iron lampposts that were all scattered all over the greater LA area as a material for artworks. They were each individual sculptures. They were not made to be interchangeable, so door from lamp A does not fit onto lamp B. So each one is a custom fit and its own special little nightmare.
Which of these? One of these has a drawing of how we've done it before.
Fitting these doors to the lamp has been a super challenge. And we kind of are joking about it that we might as well have just carved them out of marble, the amount of time that it's taking us to do this for these lamps. This is the pile. And then back here, whoa, watch your step. This lantern, I believe, is about 29 pieces that all have to come apart. Basically, if you don't get every single part apart and sandblasted and painted and then put it back together, eventually it will just rust again.
A abstracted, idealized version of the actual cast iron. Our simulated electrical wire. Finished it, set it up, then Chris came over and I could tell right away he didn't like it. And he said it looked like it was wearing galoshes, which was pretty funny. And it, you know, I agreed with him. Chris doesn't want somebody to look at a piece like this and be like, those look crooked. That's always like an issue, is getting it as straight as it possibly can be so that it disappears. So you can think about the interesting stuff. The final thing he wants is really a pure idea, and that's a similar thing in all of them.
Do you feel there's going to be something different about doing any kind of work in New York other than California?
Different? Are you talking about my moving here, you mean?
Yes.
Well, there's more action here, you know.
Do you like this area, Soho?
It's all right. I don't know. It's okay. It's close to the subways, and I don't know.
He was really intense and he was really incredibly willful. But he was sexy and he was sweet too. I don't know, I'm not the one to ask because I was, at least part of the time I was besotted, so who knows,
We were living in New York for a few months and it became clear that the marriage was not going well.
While they were there, Alexis wrote to Chris and Barbara and asked if she could come and stay with him. And an affair started while Barbara was at work.
Chris was invited to do a piece in Cleveland. The piece he did was called The Confession. He made a public confession of an extramarital affair, which he had not confessed to me previously.
I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Chris Burden.
I had figured out something was going on, so I wasn't completely surprised, but it was very difficult to sit through.
His way to deal with that was through honesty and just showing, here it is. It enabled him to have it happen and go on. So he could go on. He was free, not free of whatever might come his way, but he was free to move on. So his life is his art. Yes and no, but it is.
Well, I think we got together because of what you call chemistry. It wasn't very intellectual.
Wow, we have two hugs. Down to the panties, down to the panties. Yes, yes, I may win. Hell, man, I still have my belt on.
No.
Come on, bitch.
Oh, bastard. Ow.
Lie down. Lie down, or I'll whip you.
I know.
I thought about this dream that I had about when I was doing a real kind of strange piece, and I had a real spooky dream that I'd gotten seduced by my art, and it was a nightmare, and I couldn't function anymore in the real world.
What happens when you get, if you were to get seduced, what would happen? What would, I mean, you know, I mean, you have to, in order to be an artist, you have to have life. You have to have a life, and you have to do art, you know? What happens
You have
when
to
you
separate
cease,
the two, you
yeah,
think?
yeah, what happens when you cease to have a life? I mean, is it still art?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Huh?
I don't know either.
Now, Chris, how far can you push this?
Well, I mean, some people are like comets, you know. If I go out during a piece, that's okay.
I mean, if you die during one of your pieces,
Well,
it's all right?
I'm not planning on it, but if it happened, it would be an accident, but that would be all right. I mean, that would be, you know, that would be the unknown, right?
But you're happy, huh?
I'm not happy.
No? What are your future plans, Chris?
Hopefully I'm going to do something in Chicago.
What kind of a piece would you do?
I have no idea yet.
All we knew was that we needed to have a large sheet of glass, a clock. Not a clue what that was going to be used for. Chris came to the museum that Friday evening to begin the piece and was backstage. He was having a little bit to drink, getting himself prepared. In the meantime, outside, there was about 400 people that came. Roger Ebert did a large feature article on Chris and the work he had been doing for the past few years.
I'll have to admit I approached Chris Burden with a lot of doubts. I heard about how he'd had himself shot in the arm, nailed to a Volkswagen, and so on, and my impression was that if this was art, then so was World War II.
Really stirred up a lot of interest in people who weren't familiar with contemporary art. I think they were there to see Faces of Death or something. It was a very strange evening. Chris came out, set a clock in motion, and then climbed under the glass and laid there. People weren't sure what was supposed to happen. And they were expecting either Chris to break the glass, or a couple of people thought they were supposed to break the glass. Probably went on for maybe a couple hours, and people realized, hey, I don't think anything's happening. And little by little, they started to leave. Then it became an issue for the museum's administration. What do we do? And the administration decided, in all of our indecisiveness, we're just going to let this performance run on. It just became a waiting game. We had a group of police come in, and they came up to the glass, and one of them looked and said, he's just like Buddha. And I thought, wow, that's really profound. And then he goes, hey, Buddha. He calls over his partner, who was Buddha. And he goes, hey, look, he's just like you, Buddha. By the time Sunday came, it made national news on CBS.
The next day I kept thinking of Chris Burden. His action took on a strange kind of importance for me, but only because of the utterly serious way he approached it. It made me think about how we pass our time and about the nature of time itself. And so I suppose that did make Burden's performance into art, or if not art, then certainly something different and more mysterious than what I'd first expected.
There was a group of about 5 of us that were there for the duration of the performance. And by the end of it, I was even beginning to start to feel a little metaphysical. People were starting to feel apprehensive about this performance. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew when this piece was going to be over. A doctor came in, and he said, you know, if he doesn't have water, he's going to die of ureic poisoning. So I said, well, I'll bring him some water and something to urinate in. And that wound up being all that we had to do to end the performance. We had violated his space. After a little bit, he kind of rolled over, crawled out, and left the gallery. None of us knew at that point what was going to happen. And within a couple of minutes, he came back out with a hammer and then came towards us. And I thought I was going to die.
Killed another coyote this summer. This one here kills them. Killed one and dropped the head by the corner. We came out and we thought it was an avocado. And then went over and looked at it and it was a coyote head. And it didn't dawn on me that she'd done it until a couple years later when she dropped one of her toys exactly in the same spot. And I realized it's an energy spot because it's the corner of the building. You know, cars have to drive by there, it's narrow. So, and we've seen her kill other ones, you know.
You got out of performance art at what point?
Oh, I'd say in the mid-70s. That's true.
You've been described as self-destructive, masochistic, all sorts of things.
Yeah, well, that's the media, you know. And that was one of the reasons I stopped doing performance. I could see that if I kept along that path, I would be fulfilling some of the criticism. So I think the kind of publicity I got helped me to change direction.
Chris and I shared a studio for a while in the back of an old Chinese laundry on Pico Boulevard. That's the workshop that Chris made the big wheel in.
I was thinking about flywheels a lot, and finally I just envisioned a huge one. Came like a burst in the night. I just wanted to make the biggest wheel I could get my hands on and get to spin as fast as I could just to see what it would be like.
It was so massive, if it sheared, it would probably bounce a couple of times and then just go straight through the houses.
At 600 RPM, the wheel explodes, it shatters. I remember once I referred to it as a Neanderthal atomic bomb.
But the other option was the scary one. If it broke loose on one side and fell down, this massive 8 to 10 foot cast iron wheel would have spun around like this within it, like a top, and it would have taken everything out within 20, 30 feet, 50 feet, including us.
I mean, I could see it, you know, putting it in the Guggenheim and getting it to spin so fast that it explodes and destroys the museum. That would be pretty nice. Half the people that walk in here look at it and they can't figure out what's making it spin.
never felt safe around the big wheel. Everybody who saw that felt the fear, that it made everybody nervous, that it was not a sculpture you could imagine like little kids going up to in awe and wonder and trying to. I first met Chris Burden when I was a student at UCLA. I was his assistant for probably a year and a half. He was sort of between things.
A lot of people know you for the performance pieces that you've done. You see this relating to that form of body of work in any way?
I think people see it that way because I drive a motorcycle originally. I don't. It's just a way to get the thing to move.
I attended that, and that big flywheel started moving and rumbling, and the concrete floor began to shake. It was a little alarming. Chris's statement was that, you know, he just walks into the buzzsaw and lets the feathers fly.
This is Lincoln Television, KTSF-TV, Channel 26, broadcasting on 2.5 million watts for all of the San Francisco Bay Area.
I don't remember exactly when I first saw it. It must have been sometime in the early fall of 1977. It was for sale, and I fell in love with it. With this huge truck, I envisioned an almost endless series of projects that would free me from being an artist. The massive steel step bumper on the back of the trailer had been only slightly bent when a man had totaled his Honda automobile and killed himself. Big Job was imbued with a sense of power and evil that I found irresistible. It was a bad truck, and I wanted it. At the time, I was in an extreme state of anger and frustration. My girlfriend, Alexis Smith, was leaving me. My immediate plan that weekend was to buy Big Job and to drive to Death Valley. To escape my aura, Alexis Smith had gone to Death Valley with a Japanese art dealer, Rika Mizuno, and another girlfriend of Latvian descent. They would be out camping in the sand dunes, and far away on the horizon at dusk, they would see Big Job. Terror would grip them. A huge loudspeaker mounted on the truck would blare out, "You slit-eyed gook, you Polak, you honky twit, you're in the Valley of Death, and I'm stalking you with my blowgun."
And she was a little nervous, and she wanted to come live with us during that time to kind of be in a safe haven.
He got pretty crazy.
That Saturday morning, I had taken 50 centiliters of a dark green vial liquid that was supposed to be organic mess. The truck had turned into a giant liability rather than the fantastic asset that I had first envisioned. I felt that I had become guilty by association and that Big Job possessed a curse which I could not get rid of. My friends would make fun of me singing a little song. Big Job let me down, Big Job won't.
He just drove it around and scared everybody, and nobody wanted to ride with him.
Okay, Chris, how does it feel to have your second museum show canceled before you had a chance to participate?
Shitty. It's absolutely shitty, man. I don't know what they're scared of. I guess ultimately that, you know, that I was going to burn the museum down. I mean, what are they, fools or something?
If things didn't go exactly the way he wanted in his life, he could be very unstable. Maybe it was just too much cocaine and alcohol and weed all at the same time. For my own health and my own well-being, I didn't want to hang around with Chris or see him too often. I've been with Chris when he was really stoned and out of his mind and speeding and taking corners very fast and almost getting in wrecks. And he got it out of his system for a while, but you never could tell when he was ready to do something strange. It was common to be with Chris when he was acting up and just scaring the shit out of you.
I mean, he always had the fantasy of going down to alleys in bad parts of Los Angeles and waiting there for somebody to attack him so he'd have an excuse to take out his gun.
He was bicycling on the beach, and he'd have a gun with him. He was pushing it.
It was really heavy. I mean, Chris, at one time, Chris had been collecting all these bottles, and for about 2 hours, all I heard was like sledgehammers through the walls and glass breaking in my shop because I was right on the other side of the wall. Chris said, "I'm gonna have to shoot off my guns." I said, "You don't have to shoot off your guns. Go to bed, get some sleep." He said, "No, I said, "It doesn't matter how I feel in my own studio. No, I have to do this." I said, "Okay." I mean, the walls were shaking. I moved into my front room because I didn't want to have any bullets go through the wall.
Now, I've heard a lot of rumors about the fact that I was running around with a machine gun. It's not really a machine gun, it's an Uzi. During this time, I had taken to wearing my Uzis. I swung the gun around on its strap, so that the bulk of it was on my back, and the barrel was concealed by sticking it down my pants between my abs. The gun was completely concealed, and both my hands and arms were completely free. Look, Mom, no hands.
He used to carry it around all the time, and he would have it in the trunk of his car, and it was always loaded. Chris would just like to just shoot that thing for hours. He'd just be shooting that Uzi.
Chris always used to joke in the studio that he wanted to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Shoot by shooting me in the arm. I really didn't want part of that. That wasn't my jam.
When he was the craziest, he didn't do many of the performances that he was very famous for. His productive years were when he was stable, and the most famous piece was when he lived a very calm life with Barbara. When he left Barbara, he just went crazy, you know.
One of the reasons Chris's art is so great is because his synapses fire differently than other people's do. Sometimes they fire perhaps in a direction that they shouldn't fire.
The only place I know of that he used to shoot in the wild was Topanga Canyon. He took me down there and showed me a car that he'd peppered pretty good with the Uzi. Just opening that thing up and letting her rip. To tell you the truth, after he moved to Topanga and moved into the place where his studio is now, I hadn't talked to him since. I think he had to calm down at a certain point.
It's not the easiest place to find and come to. And I think he's guarding his creativity and his sanity or insanity by keeping a nice distance from the art world. He thinks twice before he ventures out of where he feels very comfortable.
I think the public wants you to keep doing one thing. Because it was hard enough the first time to wrestle, to understand. But once they think they understand that body of work, They don't want to do it over and over. It's much too hard, you know? So when you do something new, it's very, very disturbing to people when you change. I remember when I did Beam Drop in upstate New York and they were interviewing me on a TV station. The guy was trying to make what I did really freaky. You know, brings up a couple performances, shows Beam Drop, wow, what a nut. After I left the station, I remember thinking, you know, there is a tradition for what I'm doing. If you look back in our history, if some of the people at the turn of the century were here now, they wouldn't be making paintings. They'd be doing art like I'm doing, or some of the people I respect are doing. Do you know what I'm saying? The people that we respect now in art history were at their times seemed difficult and outrageous in pushing something. And that is basically the history of art, you know. It does push your head around a little. Otherwise, it's not very good art. I got a card from some lady who saw the neutron bomb piece. She really liked the display of the nickels and the matches and stuff, but there was something she didn't like. It was that it was ambiguous, and I wasn't really clear, and you know, she wasn't sure whether I was against the bomb or for it, and could I please write her back and explain that to her? She wanted, you know, to tidy it up and stuff for her, and I thought, well, you know, it must be doing its job for you. I don't know, maybe I should never talk about my work. You know, take it or leave it, there it is. I don't have anything to say. I don't think I set out intentionally to be difficult, you know, as if that's, I did wear the striped shirt today, though, to see if that would screw up the camera.
In 1991, I had been watching this Medusa's head growing like some strange carbuncle in his studio, and he had been just sort of rolling money into this thing, and it kept getting bigger and kind of more cumbersome, and how is it going to come apart? It was really beautiful. This sort of dense, craggy rock covered with trains.
The content of the piece is about an ecological nightmare that failed to occur, which was the 19th century nightmare of the world taken over by a railroad track. Medusa's head is about how our fears usually doesn't come at us straight.
When I first saw it, it just kind of blew my mind. It had that kind of impact of one of the early performances. It was just obsessive, and the result was a completely unique, singular work of art.
They're not like the easily collectible pieces, the way a lot of Warhols, where people are like, wow, this is a Warhol, and you can put it right on the wall, and this is nice. I mean, Chris Burden is up my alley. A little crazy, but in a good way. Vaguely familiar, you know, the way people talked about me. So I'd have like Hell's Gate Bridge, you know, I used to own that.
I think pure science and art are real similar in that they're experiments into something you don't know. So you don't even know sometimes what you're searching for. You're just sort of probing around.
The B car was exhibited in Europe, and the whole idea was driving it from Amsterdam to Paris. But it was an enormous disappointment for him, because people look at the B car, is it art or is it something else? It was still somewhere between an answer to an exercise and a work of art.
I just wish that he will still do the 70s performance, because I'm very nostalgic about this kind of work.
Can you project yourself into frame of mind of the 70s when you were doing some of that?
Early 70s?
Yeah. I think it'd be interesting.
There is absolutely no integrity in the art world, and there hasn't been for some decades. And I can see boards of trustees all over the United States sitting there, having a meeting and saying, isn't it time we had a Chris Burden, the man who shot himself? If this is art, we must have it. Monkey see, monkey do.
No matter what he did, it was always going to be seen sort of in context and against these sensationally visible actions.
I mean, here we are today, we're still talking about shoot. You know, I don't think about it. It's like a very, very old girlfriend, you know? I mean, yes, you remember, but it's not, you don't think about it every day.
His class at UCLA, of course, people had to do performances. And there was always this danger with somebody studying with Chris that they'd look at the early work that everybody knows, and they'd assume that doing something with violent overtones was something that Chris would thoroughly love.
A student brought a gun to a class to do a performance. It was a revolver, and he loaded the gun. He had 2 bullets, he put one in, and then he spun the chamber and held it to his head, and there were maybe another 30, 40 students in a circle around him. It clicked, and he ran outside, and then the rest of the students heard the gun go off. So everybody was scared to go outside because they thought maybe he'd killed himself. The university, in their greater wisdom, blamed me. Most of the faculty said, well, Chris, what do you expect? You know, look what you did. Wait a minute, you know, we're the parents here. We have to say no.
Chris Burden, who was by then a senior professor at UCLA, was outraged about it. He and Nancy Rubin, his wife, retire in protest. If you say, Chris Burden, you will get 80 people out of 100 will say, okay, yeah, he's the guy who had himself shot. How can you get out from under that?
Here's a model. We're looking at the walk-up skyscraper, and we're looking at the top of it. It's lying on its side. You'll be able to do this. Basically, these steps circle the whole thing like a ziggurat, and you'll be able to walk up and then ultimately stand here and hold on here. And it has no railing. So what you do is you can hold on to the inner structure. And it's about 44 feet high or something. It's all made out of this Type 1 erector set stuff. And it's a child's fantasy to be able to do this, but a child doesn't have the financial or, you know, intellectual resources to be able to pull it off. But a kid could fantasize this very easily, I think. I like the fact that you can make these pretty strong structures. You can really build something that's substantial.
Chris has never been afraid to make something that manipulates and embraces spectacle.
I came up with what my dad gave me. He was an engineer, and I think he gave me somehow the courage to do these things.
He is somebody who remains absolutely delighted. His heart just sings at the next proposition. If you take the entire body of work and you lay it out, people would understand how it had played itself out in a variety of manifestations that are, oddly enough now, public monuments.
You know, people see these works and they assume it was a commission. that somebody asked you to make this and they had the financing behind it to begin with. They can't believe you produce these works on spec, you know, which I never really thought about, you know what I'm saying? I mean, to be honest, Metropolis was a bit of a stretch for me and scary because it was such a complex work. It was set up here, took something like 6 months to take apart and 9 months to reinstall. I think it's about Los Angeles. I think it's a poetic vision of or interpretation of Los Angeles.
It takes a pretty driven person to go through all the trouble of making that piece. Every detail is perfect. As his pieces get bigger, the consistent thing is the surprise.
People love it, and people go nuts for it. The idea that he'd become beloved and emblematic of Los Angeles in this sort of cuddly way was something that nobody could have predicted back then.
He is a big collector of toys and scientific things and models. Whatever he's got in his pocket, he will figure out a project to spend it all, you know, bet the entire ranch, literally, for the next piece.
I'd gone to the swap meet in Pasadena, it's called the Rose Bowl, and he had 2 of these lamps. And I looked at him and I said, God, these look like the real thing. He says, they are, and if you buy both of them, I'll deliver them and I'll give you a discount. I said, okay, I wrote him a check right there on the spot. During the course of a year, I bought his entire collection. And then I just started collecting them and collecting them. After I bought all the lamps, Jeff Levine, the former owner of a lot of them, said to me, I knew you would come someday. And I kind of sort of staggered a little, and I realized he meant it as not only a compliment, but he was so happy that I took his vision and was able to complete it. Because he had a dream of buying 10 acres up in the Central Valley somewhere with a really long driveway. And he was going to install all his 150 lamps up this long driveway. His parents and his brothers, who have been a little bit down on Mr. Levine for being a pack rat and a hoarder and a junker collector, were able to witness the unveiling of his former lamps at the LA County Museum, totally vindicating him in the eyes of his parents and siblings. So, you know, there's really nice aspects to it. The lamps became this sort of something, you know, this act of generosity, I think. I go by there sometimes at 1:30 at night. There's people in there taking pictures and frolicking and making out, and kids bouncing off the lamps.
It's a temple of light. It has become the artistic symbol of the city. It's photographed almost as much as the Hollywood sign is by tourists, which is sort of a remarkable phenomenon.
They are not about me as an individual artist or my creation as an artist. People just enjoy them and they get great pleasure from them. They could care less who the artist is. In a certain way, that's fine for me because it means that the artwork is bigger than the maker. You know, I started doing some research and I came across this early aviator, a Brazilian aviator named Santos Dumont. And in 1901, he won a prize for going on a set course flying around the Eiffel Tower. I decided I needed to make a sculpture that was an ode to this historic event.
I think Chris originally said to me he wanted to fly around Topanga Canyon, and I was kind of like, okay, I guess we're making a blimp or something. You know, Chris would modify things as they came up. So it ends up being a really great journey, and Chris really understands that.
The thing that went on for years was the making of the engine. It seemed to be really just in the last 18 months of his life that he really brought all the elements together. Chris had a melanoma, and last fall, around the time when you were last filming him, he discovered that, in fact, the cancer had spread. He was quite clear about not wanting this information to be shared with anyone. At the point when he realized that his health was not going to improve, it was his work that he wanted to privilege. The work itself would create a legacy. When the piece first flew up at the hangar, he was particularly thrilled that, with all of its science and engineering, that he could feel it. It was like that stasis, that balance, that equilibrium. Chris always was trying to find where that place is.
I was standing with him, and there's the moment when the motor cuts out, and it's just this graceful peel away as it just quietly moves on. And I turned to Chris to see his reaction, and he was like, wow, you know, there it is, man, there's the moment. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty fucking cool. And then I was like, you know, how's it all going? And he's like, well, you know, it sucks. You know, this is kicking my ass. And I'm like, oh, man. And he turned to me and he said, you know, John, it's going to be what it is, and it's okay. And I was like, every time it has its moment, the blimp, it's just Chris is there with it. Just, I can see him just, he's like, oh, there it is. It's that moment, that moment. And it's so rare to have those moments, and Chris really understood them. It really made him happy. He's like, oh, there it is. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's in its moment.
Keep them dreams burning, baby. Keep them dreams burning forever. Oh, dream, baby, dream. Dream, baby, dream. Forever. Oh, dream, baby, dream. Dream, baby, dream. Oh, dream, baby, dream. Dream, baby, dream. Forever.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Mr. Burden here while we have him today? Anything else that you think might be important? The crowd seems happy. Thank you very much, Mr. Burden.
All right. Thank you.